Babamvuso, let me start with you. So, the task of reviving South Africa's economy was always going to be a daunting one. The reforms, we are told, it's nothing that's going to be seen immediately. But when you have spats, like we've seen over the mandate of the Reserve Bank among very senior members of the ANC, surely that doesn't inspire confidence, particularly to the people who've just returned to the ANC to power.
You're absolutely right, Toli. I'm afraid the situation in the ANC is actually very perplexing. When you've got senior people campaigning against the organization to which they belong, then you've got a very serious problem. The issue, for instance, of the South African Reserve Bank, that's a case in point. It's not as if the people are concerned about that. Their concern really is about repudiating the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa. So it is going to make it very difficult for the ANC if it doesn't stop, and whip these kinds of people into form or out of the existence of the organization. There is no way the manifesto declarations are going to be implemented.
The culprits behind this, are they as obvious as what we constantly see and write about in the media, or are there more people behind the scenes?
There is a campaign, and it gives the impression, it very cleverly uses the social media, Instagram, Twitter. This gives the impression that there are very many people. There aren't many people. But you do have the usual culprits, Tony Yengeni, Mzwandile Masina, and I've seen somebody, Andile Lungisa. In one way or another, they find a way of jabbing into what the ANC is doing. Let's talk about the South African Reserve Bank, and if you'll allow me, I'll just quote the disinformation, courtesy Mzwandile Masina. He says, for your information, he shows a picture of a person called Michael Dürr. He lives in Germany, but owns 57.5% of Reserve Bank, a central bank whose mandate is to maintain price stability in the country, maintain monetary policy, print and distribute money to South Africans. He blatantly refused to give away majority shareholding of the state. He decided on how much money South Africans should take home. He lends them money and decides on his interest. In general life, this is gibberish, but it says in general life, South Africans lend, their fate is decided by this man in Germany. What are the facts? This man owned 4.5%, not 57%, of the land of the Reserve Bank. He failed to declare at a certain time, and he was forced to surrender 80,000 of his shares out of the 90,000 that constitute the 4.5%. So this person holds right now 10,000 shares. This is a fact that can be verified by anybody who wishes to.
Let me bring into the conversation Dr. Iraj Abedian. Doc, ratings agency Moody's here says we're teetering on the brink of a second technical recession. We entered into one last year after the contraction of the first and second quarters there, but it says it's still positive about the president's leadership. How positive are they? Mind you, they're the only ratings agency that have not downgraded us into junk status yet.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Moody's is entitled to his own views. And I agree with them on one front, which is being optimistic on President Ramaphosa's leadership. With respect to going into a technical recession, I'm getting increasingly more concerned that Moody's may be underplaying to support their own position that they have not junk graded South Africa. They're trying to justify their own, if you like, judgments, which may or may not turn out to be true. What is true and it's a subject of our discussion, and Mr. Msimang highlighted it very clearly, that the country's policy making from no other place than from within the heart of the governing party is now being sabotaged. You cannot have a governing party in a modern economy being in government and at the same time being in opposition. That is very bizarre. That is very almost inexplicable if it's superimposed on a complex modern economy like South Africa, which is very, very integrally into the global capital markets, and everybody watches the situation. So whatever happens in the political arena within the ANC, driven by a bunch of people who are in leadership position but have absolutely no concern for the consequences of their shenanigans on the poor and on the marginalized, the working class, especially the unemployed, which means it can push the economy not just to a technical recession. Remember, technical recession is when you have negative growth in 2 consecutive quarters. We've already had one, and they say Moody's is right and we have another one. But my concern increasingly is that if we do not arrest this fairly inexplicable undermining of the national interest by the governing party, we stand a high chance of going into a real recession, a prolonged recession. Just consider exchange rate staying volatile, interest rates are not cut. Moody's thinks the Reserve Bank will cut, but the Reserve Banks, if exchange rate keeps at these elevated rates and imported inflation, imported fuel, imported all the items that we have to import, picks up, then the Reserve Bank will have a situation where inflation spikes and then cannot cut the rates. It should cut the rates, provided the situation is stabilized. At the moment, the governing party is destabilizing the macro-financials, stopping the Reserve Bank from cutting interest rates, potentially. So that's my concern. And it may be the case that Moody's is too optimistic at the moment if we do not arrest this totally inexplicable spat, as you call them, which I would call it more like undermining and sabotaging the national macroeconomic stability.
Doc, very quickly, and in the interest of time, let me put to you perhaps another important element that you have been very vocal about on social media, and that is, if you put aside the spats over the Reserve Bank, the SOEs, they are also on the radar of ratings agencies. Vuyani Jahana, you were quite vocal there. Is the new leadership helping the situation? You were very, very critical of the so-called political interference, which was contained in Jahana's resignation.
Absolutely. It's quite clear that increasingly the relationship between the political trustees, the ministers in charge, the boards, I'm very clear that the boards have let down the SAA. They have not done what the board should be doing. You cannot have a minister agreeing to a board, the board agreeing to a turnaround the strategy, and not supporting the chief executive, because it's not the chief executives, it's the board that is ultimately responsible.
All right, Dr. Iraj Abedian, let's park it there for the moment. Mr. Mahfouz,
Yes.
talk to us about what will it take for the ANC top 6 to pull together. Just that leadership at the top, never mind the rest of the 80-plus NEC membership, just the top 6. Who's the problem there?
There is a problem within the top 6. So you really want to get everybody on the NEC to play their role, their leadership role, and intervene when people act irresponsibly, including people from the SG's office. You know, this thing that we're talking about, I don't want to stick too much to the Reserve Bank because you want to be broad about the issues, but his Twitter account was used to contradict the statement that had been put out by the president. Just yesterday. Now, whether he actually gets in there or not, I mean, it's neither here nor there, but it's him who has given access to somebody to contradict the president of the country, excuse me, and say something that has the effect that Iraj is describing. So what is required now is much broader leadership than this. To pin your hopes on the top 6 is really a little bit futile, because there is definitely an individual there, maybe more than one, who are actively sabotaging what the ANC is doing.
Mr. Mavuso, we are completely out of time, but I'm going to ask you very, very quickly, if you have any knowledge of this as a party member. There are suggestions that the ANC Secretary General, Ace Magashule, is under investigation for, among other things, his alleged involvement in the setting up of a political entity called ATM, which Mzwanele Manye was party to. Are you aware of this investigation? And if it is, where would you hope it takes Ace Magashule and his ilk?
I am not aware of that. That would be the short answer to your question. But I do believe that once the criminal justice organizations swing into action, there is a lot that they need to ask him for regarding his history in the Free State, and mainly in the Free State. Also, the ANC must not wait until these other things take place. They are a leadership who ought to demand accountability for their own. Surely they ought to have a special sitting to really understand, make people understand that what these...
When you say special sitting, are you suggesting a special conference to...
No conference. This is a waste of time. There are no policy issues here. We've got behavior issues, discipline issues. They must sit down and say what these utterances are causing is sabotaging employment opportunities, investment opportunities. You know, people talk about imperialists and so on. You are not going to do without these rating agencies. You need them in this capitalist world in which we are, and the whole world is capitalist, by the way, for the time being. You just cannot come up with revolutionary slogans about imperialists. This investors are who make jobs possible.
Should Ace Magashule be disciplined? I guess that...
Absolutely. Absolutely, he has to.
Mr. Mavuso Msimang, thank you very much for your time. He's a veteran leader of the ANC. And of course, my thanks to Dr. Iraj Abidian. Thanks indeed as you make your way to Botswana. Good luck on that trip.